certain section, rocking since last election. We win, it's we time now. Causing row and ruction, telling big man and woman, make way, it's we time now. How they suffer 10 long years was blatant malice, spite and tears. So now it's time to stand your ground, 'cause there's a new sheriff in town. And who don't like it, hush, bring toilet bowl and flush. He now in charge from north to south. Yeah, who don't like it, shift to the North Pole, just rip, shape up or shape up. I could still hear the echo, they wrote much on my radio. When we win, everybody win. The universal promise, how they would bear no malice. When we win, everybody win. But then Padas ransom start to jam. We have win. Property tax refund, flim flam. We have win. But CPEP and then URP. Tell me who win. Say too much costs and rather be. Until we stop the fighting, nitpicking and backbiting. Till then, nobody wins. So one from Gusto Kanda, according to singing Sandra in war. Nobody wins. Nobody. Till then, nobody wins. Nobody. Not one body. Till then, nobody wins. Because the code was yellow, a fellow start to bellow. We win, it's we time now. Train his guns on Wassa, locked on them like laser. We win, it's we time now. Cause Madam was a little frail. Her deputy, he did prevail. From Port of Spain to Philippines, get spinning like a drama queen. Say who don't like it, hush. The WhatsApp plan, they flush. Rip it up at first post cab. All youth programs, they shift. On ego trips, they drift. And OJT playing man crab. It was a catchy refrain, the anthem of their campaign. When everybody wins. The inmates kept bringing, me dog and all was singing. When everybody wins. Then NGC, they show their hand. We are win. Withdraw their sponsorship from pan. We are win. Can't even noise, they start to shout. Tell me who wins. Cut we fretting time in half. Until they stop gaslighting our culture, stop attacking. Till then, nobody wins. I shouldn't have to raise it, but singing Sandra phrase it in war. Nobody wins. Till they throw hate out the window. Nobody wins. They do them back extempo. Nobody wins. Till equal rights exist, no rest, no prejudice. Till then, nobody wins. A time for reconstruction, not cries of mass destruction. It's me time now. Nobody should be boasting with champagne glasses toasting. It's me time now. Superior tones we should reject. It's time to build mutual respect. No one should walk with their chest swell. And who don't like it, go to hell. Negative voices hush. The tit for tat just flush. We should be acting more mature. So there's a power shift and not to sudden drift. Country first we should ensure. But I could still hear the motto, the road march on my radio. We win, everybody wins. NTD clips and promotes, we have win. And blatant murder sugar coats, we have win. Now they capture Maduro, Tagoy. Oh, they stop the bravado. Till the Kool-Aid song stop drinking, forget the foolish thinking. Till then, nobody win. I cannot take the credit for singing. Sandra said it in war. Nobody wins until we cool the fire. Nobody wins. Politics and spite retire. Nobody wins till we forgo vainglory. Put country before party. Till then, nobody wins. Hear me? Until we have unity. Nobody wins. Not drama and geometry. Nobody wins. Until we forget ego. Project mandatory labor. Till then, nobody wins. Skin and back, sing with me. Nobody. Hey, nobody. Till then, nobody wins. Nobody wins. I shouldn't have to raise it, but singing Sandra phrase it in war. Nobody wins. Till they throw hate out the window. Nobody wins. They do them back extempo. Nobody wins. Till equal rights exist, no rest, no prejudice. Till then, nobody wins. Skin up back. Yeah, 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 yeah. A time for reconstruction, not cries of mass destruction. It's me time now. Nobody should be boasting with champagne glasses toasting. It's me time now. Superior tones we should reject. It's time to build mutual respect. No one should walk with their chest swell. And who don't like it, go to hell. Negative voices hush. Beat it but touch just flush. We should be acting more mature. So there's a power shift and not to sudden it. Country first we should ensure. But I could still hear the motto, the road march on my radio. We win, everybody wins. The universal mantra like abracadabra. We win, everybody wins. When NTD clips and promotes, we have win. And blatant murder sugar coats, we have win. Now they capture Maduro, Tagoy. Oh, they stop the bravado. Till the Kool-Aid song stop drinking, forget the foolish thinking. Till then, nobody wins. I cannot take the credit for singing. Sandra said it in war. Nobody wins until we cool the fire. Nobody wins. Politics and spite retire. Nobody wins till we forgo vainglory. Put country before party. Till then, nobody wins. Hear me? Until we have unity. Nobody wins. Not drama and geometry. Nobody wins until we forget ego. Project mandatory labor. Till then, nobody wins. Skin and back, say with me. Nobody. Hey, nobody. Till then, nobody wins. Nobody. Not one body. Till then, nobody. One more time. Say, nobody. Till then, oh, but this song ain't good. Nobody, not one body. Till then, nobody wins.
Oh, well. Karine Ashe, the queen of calypso in Trinidad and Tobago and in our Caribbean. Young one, nobody wins. Nobody wins. Commenting on the triumphalism that has occurred in Trinidad since the UNC won the election last year, and the triumphalism that they won and it's their time now. And the Calypsonian is saying, nobody wins. You may win an election, but in the end, nobody wins. She borrowed the refrain from her mentor, Sandra Devines, the late singing Sandra, who said, nobody wins a war. Nobody wins. Collateral damage is always the people. Good evening to you. Good evening to all of you, wonderful people. It's good to be with you again. Another day in the struggle, another day to right the wrongs, another day to make straight the crooked highways and byways of our politics. It's good to be among the living. Good evening, wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from outside of Guyana or you're joining us from in Guyana. We are all family, and we're in this together. A shout out to all those of you who are preparing for Mashramani. It's happening almost unnoticed because of the budget and the debate around the budget. But it's Mash weekend. Thursday is the Thursday before the Mashramani weekend, and Monday is the 23rd, the Republic anniversary and Mash time. I hope people are preparing to at least have a smile on the weekend. After all, as I said in my budget speech, everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. Everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious. The anxiety and the strain of life in Guyana take their toll. But let us spare a smile for our Mashramani. Good evening. Good evening to all of you. Good evening to all of you who I met in the last 24 hours. I traveled for a minute. Everyone who came up to chat or to take a selfie, big shout out to all of you. I met the son of an old WPA stalwart. One of our old stalwart from West Bobis and Buxton, James Herod, the late James Herod, met one of his sons. Good evening to you. Good evening to you. Took the Cake is the woman, Indian woman who recognized me and say, you is the man that is be giving the government hell. And she said, let me take a selfie. And she go into her phone and she said, this phone does make people look younger than they are when they have something in the phones. Now, I don't know. Indian woman, and she said to me, we are one people, regardless of what. And she learns so much, not from listening to the side that she is supposed to be loyal to, but listen to the other side. And that's where she encountered me with my signature glasses, she said. That anywhere. And she encouraged us to continue to fight. Our country is not a monolith, not a monolith. Our country is a diverse country, and it must reflect that diversity, regardless of how we vote. As Karina Shea said there, this thing about when you win, you engage in this big triumphalism that now you win is you time, which means that is not the other people time. When you win is your time. What about the other people? There are always people who are represented by the opposition. Barbados, Mayor Motley, Barbados Labour Party won all 30 seats. All 30 seats. But she won with 70% of the votes. 30% of the people voted for the party that got 0 seats. If Barbados had a proportional representation system like Guyana, Mia would have ended up with 21 seats, and the opposition Democratic Labour Party would have ended up with 9 seats. But because of the first past the post system, she won with 70% of the vote, which is a lot. A 2/3 majority, she can change the constitution there legitimately without the opposition. But the fact of the matter is that she won 70% of the popular vote, but got 100% of the seats. And the opposition party, the Democratic Labour Party, which was caught unawares, they got 30% of the vote, nevertheless, which means 3 out of 10 Barbadians voted for them. And they would have gotten 9 seats. But now they have 0 seats. And of course, the Barbados Labour Party is going to say, me time, and they will govern as though they alone are there. It's one of the good things about our political system is that we have a mixed system, partly first past the post and partly proportional representation. I think 15 of the seats are divided along regional lines, and so that is first past the post. And 45 of the seats is proportional representation. So even if you have a skew with the first past the post votes, it's usually corrected with the proportional representation section. Welcome on a Thursday afternoon. We still have to continue to keep watch. This business of we win, and it's we time. You heard it there in the National Assembly. Every speaker on the government side taunted the opposition, especially the APNU, that you will remain in opposition until you die. At the next election, you will get 0 seat. And then Andalal said, what are you asking us for? You didn't vote for us. We can't govern for you. You heard them talk about the budget reflecting the PPP manifesto. It's triumphalism and it's domination. In our system, there is a winner and there are losers. The rules say that. but they make space for the opposition. They make space for the loser. It's not strong enough. Article 13 talks about an inclusive democracy, and people usually cite it, but Article 13 is not enforceable. That is the problem in our country. There are some things in our constitution that speak to inclusivity, but they are not enforceable. And we've got to reach the point where we make these things enforceable. And that's why some of us have been talking and advocating for meaningful power sharing a long time ago, starting with Sidney King in 1961, when he called for a joint premiership between Mr. Burnham and Dr. Jagan. He had seen signs that the society didn't want to be governed in a certain way. None of the two major ethnic groups wanted to be governed by the other. And so he argued that both of them should govern, hence a joint premiership. But it was rejected by both Jagan and Burnham. In fact, Sidney King was expelled from the PNC because they said he was preaching race, because he had argued that if they didn't want to come together, then as a last resort, they should consider partition, where East Indians live in one zone, Africans live in one zone, and those who want to live together live in a third zone. Sometimes people forget that part of it. Both of them rejected it. Dr. Jagan was to float the idea in 1963, when he saw that he was likely to be removed from government. He then floated the very idea of a power sharing between himself and Mr. Burnham, with Mr. Burnham being prime minister and he being deputy prime minister, divided the cabinet seats between himself and Mr. Burnham. They almost the same thing that Sidney King had advocated 2 years before, and they rejected. But when he saw that he was about to lose power, and in the middle of the ethnic civil war, he sought to float the very idea that he rejected 2 years before. By that time, Mr. Burnham was anticipating being put into power, and he said no to Dr. Jagan. Said no to Dr. Jagan. And that was that. We went into civil war from 1961 to 1964. Hundreds died, property destroyed, villages divided. Something that we have not recovered from to this day. In 1977, being forced by the communist parties, Dr. Jagan returned from a Communist Party meeting in Cuba, I think, and proposed a National Patriotic Front. Again, a power sharing between the PNC and the PPP. Dr. Jagan was prepared to live with Mr. Burnham as president, as he was prepared to live with Mr. Burnham as prime minister in 1963. He proposed the National Patriotic Front between the PPP and the PNC. Again, Mr. Burnham rejected the proposal. Mr. Burnham famously said if the Mensheviks had joined with the Bolsheviks, there would have been no Russian Revolution. The Mensheviks were the minority group in Russia in 1917, at the time of the Russian Revolution. And the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, they were the majority. And it was the Bolsheviks who led the revolution and triumphed and dominated the revolution. So Mr. Burnham said, if the Bolsheviks had joined with the Mensheviks, there would be no Soviet revolution, no Russian revolution. Dr. Jagan were to, in 1985 again, proposed to the PNC that they govern the country together. They govern the country together. This time, I think they were going to call it the motherland government, something like that. And this time they actually begun to talk. Burnham agreed. And they began to talk. People like Ali Majid was there as part of the PNC team. I think Mrs. Jagan, I'm not sure. But I know Rohi and some others were part of the PPP. They started to talk. And they had made some ground. And then, as our luck or bad luck would have it, Mr. Burnham died in August of 1985. And when Mr. Burnham died and Desmond Hoy took over, he said no. He didn't want any unity with the PPP. And so that initiative was squashed. Hoyt himself, after much dancing and delay, would in 2002 at the PNC Biannual Congress declare that power sharing is an idea whose time has come, and agreed to power sharing with the PPP. Unfortunately, he died that year. He died in December of 2002 and didn't get to see it through. But by that time, the PPP had turned its back on power sharing. After the PPP got into power in 1992, Jagan had promised what he called the Mandela solution. If he won power, the Mandela solution, borrowing from Nelson Mandela, who, when he came to power in 1994 in South Africa, mandated that part of the seats in government must go to the apartheid party. And so he gave, I think it was 1/3 of the seats. I may be wrong with the proportion, either 1/3 or 1/4, but he gave part of the government to the apartheid party and made Mr. de Klerk a vice president. This was the apartheid party that had ravaged black people in South Africa, jailed Mandela, but Mandela was gracious enough to say that white people are part of the country and they should be part of governance. And he gave part of the government to them. And then there was the Inkatha party, which was the Zulu party, black party in Zululand. They were causing a lot of trouble. And Mandela brought that party, the Inkatha party, into the government. And he made, I think Buthelezi, I can't remember his name now, but my bright students here, I'm sure, will remember. He brought in the Inkatha Party, made the leader of the Inkatha Party the Minister of Home Affairs, so put him in charge of law and order in the country. And Mandela was something else. He didn't play. He said this country belonged to everybody. So when Jagan came to power here in 1992, when he returned, he said he was going to implement the Mandela solution. But once he got into power, he turned his back. He first turned his back on the WPA. What is not known by many Guyanese, I'm sure including a lot of students here, in 1992, the PPP needed one seat to get a majority in the National Assembly. And in Region 8, the WPA held the balance. It could have given that seat to the PNC or given it to the PPP. And they decided to vote along and allowed PPP to get the seat, to get a majority in the National Assembly. In 1992, the PPP could not have gotten a majority without the WPA. Same WPA that they treated badly. And Dr. Jagan had proposed that WPA join the PPP government in a power sharing government. But then they changed their mind. So they changed their mind on a grand coalition of all parties. And they changed their mind on a limited coalition with the WPA. And they governed alone. Jagan broke his promise. He broke his promise for a national government. And some of us younger people took to the media and began to advocate for power sharing. The WPA side, myself and Takumo Ogunse and others were in the forefront in the media, hammering away. Kwayana at that time was a senior statesman, and he made way for us younger people on the PNC side. Aubrey Norton, Sherwood Lowe, McAllister, that group, they advocated for power sharing with all the parties, PNC, PPP, and perhaps others. And we hammered away. Hoyt resisted. On the PPP side, Moses Nagamutu was the only one. I still have that article by Moses. Moses Nagamutu was the only one who came out publicly and said he agreed with power sharing. So we had Moses, PPP, Aubrey, and Sherwood, and the McAllister, and the others on the PNC, myself, Takumo Ogunse, and others on the WPA side. And we worked until Hoyt agreed. As I said, Hoyt agreed in 2002. He said power sharing is an idea whose time has come. He had resisted it, you know. He couldn't understand a political system outside of the Westminster winner-take-all system. But to his credit, he came around. But he died shortly afterwards. And then when Corbyn took over the PNC, to the surprise of many people, Corbyn pursued power sharing. Henry Jeffrey, who is usually on here, was the one, I think, who mediated and got Corbyn and Jack Dio to talk. And they agreed. They came to an agreement. And they were about to sign a power sharing agreement. until Jack Dio people came back and said, the thing is off. Some of them said it was Janet Jagan who scuttled it. We may never know until they come clean whether it was the Jack Dio people who scuttled it and put the blame on Janet, or whether Janet scuttled it. We don't know. But that's perhaps the closest we came to a power sharing arrangement between Corbyn and Jack Dio. And Corbyn suffered a lot because of that, because a lot of people, malicious people, accused Corbyn of selling out to the PPP. They didn't know what he was doing. He gambled his entire career on that power sharing arrangement and almost made it. Almost made it. As I said, we wouldn't know whether it was Janet Jagan who scuttled it or not. Janet Jagan was very much anti-power sharing. I understand she was not in favor of it in 63, in 76, in 85, nor the post-2002 power sharing between Jack Dio and thing. That is, but publicly, she was against power sharing. So it's easy to pin it on her that she's the one who scuttled it. The WPA had proposed a government of national unity and reconstruction in 1979. Walter Rodney was still around at the time, and they had proposed a government of national unity and reconstruction without the PNC. They argued that the PNC was the problem and it couldn't be part of the solution. Jagan argued that the PNC should be involved. Later on in 1985, WPA was to revise its position and to say a PNC that agrees to free and fair election must be in a national government. So the WPA revised its position in 1985 when Quayana at the Crystal Labour College presented the WPA position in a speech or a paper called Forward to the Democratic Republic. And Rodney himself, when he was alive, did say that if the PNC agreed to free and fair election, then he's prepared to work with the PNC in a power-sharing government. So as usual, I give you all that history. And thanks to the brothers last night I met at the airport who thanked me. Sometimes I feel, a big man like me, sometimes I blush. But thank us for educating the nation on its history and its culture and so on. And we all have roles to play. And perhaps that is our role, and we play that role. Because buried in our history are some truths that will make some people feel shame today. One of the things they curse me about in the National Assembly there is I'm sitting with people who killed Walter Rodney. You heard it in their speeches. And they demonize Burnham. But if you listen to me carefully tonight, Jagan was prepared to serve under Burnham in 1963, in 1977, and 1985. This demon Burnham, Jagan, their hero, their god, was prepared to serve under him. That is a truth. Tell them David Hines says so. So these are now carrying on as though if you work with the PNC, you're working with the devil. And they wanted to serve under that devil. Did they do it out of principle? Or did they do it out of expediency? They must answer that. But the devil that they're telling me and the WPA that we are sitting with today, they wanted to sit and serve under that devil. The hypocrisy is amazing. And I know, I am very sure that 90%, perhaps more than 90% of the PPP people sitting in the National Assembly do not know those historical facts that I outlined there tonight. They don't know it. They don't know it. So it's part ignorance. And when ignorance meet with hatred, it's a bad thing. The Burnham that they're cussing me about, or Burnham jail me, I look and sit down with Burnham killers. And they're sitting with Rodney killers, sorry. And they wanted to serve under those killers, as they call them. The hypocrisy. The other thing, the other conclusion is that at least the WPA is consistent. We said that a PNC that agreed to free and fair election, we are prepared to serve with them in any coalition or national government. And we are consistent. We are doing that today. And we didn't wait until today to do it. In 1990, when the term of the government was over, and Jimmy Carter came and they agreed to change the rules to allow for open elections, they couldn't get the reforms done in time for the election. So they had to agree to an extension. And the extension lasted from 1990 to 1992. So the PNC government under Hoyt got an extra 2 years. And we in the WPA proposed that, look, in those 2 years, rather than the PNC governing by itself, let us have a national government that include the PNC and members of what was then the Patriotic Coalition for Democracy, that included the PPP, the WPA, the DLM of Paul Tennessee, and others. And the PPP told us that that will never happen. The PNC will never agree to share those 2 years. But they said we can try our luck. And the WPA went and met with the PNC, Hoyt and his group. And Hoyt said yes. He's prepared to agree to that. That for the 2 years from 1990 to 1992, we have a national government of all the parties. We propose, in the WPA proposed that since Hoyt was the incumbent, he should be the president and Jagan probably as the deputy vice president or the prime minister. But Hoyt agreed. And when we went back to the PPP and said, Hoyt has agreed, let's do this thing, the PPP said no. So even before they got power in 1992, they started to turn their back on a national government. In 1997, when the PPP term was cut short because of the Ordmanston Accord and the St. Lucia Accord and the ruling by Claudette Singh that the use of electronic ID was unconstitutional, Rupert Roopnaraine, on behalf of the WPA, proposed that the extra 2 years, we should have a national government of all the parties, rather than the PPP alone. This time, the PPP, you know. And the PPP said no again. And you remember in 2020, after the impasse, and we couldn't agree, they going to court up and down, and delaying, the PPP going to court, and delaying the result for 5 months. They put that blame on the coalition. But it's not the coalition that went to court. It's the PPP first went to court and drag out for that 5 months. During that 5 months, two people publicly, Vincent Alexander and myself, said we should agree to a national government lasting for 2 or 3 years, and that government should include all the parties, and that government should have the task of cleaning up GCOM, cleaning up the electoral system, and make it a democratic system, and then go back to election. I remember, using very colorful language. I said, just dismiss the boxes. I didn't mean to throw the boxes away. I mean to ignore what's in the boxes, because I knew there was trouble in those boxes. And I said, just forget about those boxes and let's do an interim government. And the PPP rejected it. It cost me nasty from then. David Hines wanted to throw away the boxes. Well, when they opened the boxes, what did we see? We saw that the PPP rigged the hell out of the 2020 election long before. We saw 48 boxes without statutory documents. We saw all kinds of malpractice in the boxes. I knew that. The sources in GCOM had told us. And that is why the PPP didn't want those boxes to be opened. And my argument was, just forget about the 2020 elections. And let us have an interim government, vitiate the elections, have an interim government, and clean up GCOM. And I still believe that. I still believe that if GCOM is going to be cleaned up, all of us have to agree to clean it up. Because if the PPP may agree to clean up, but to clean up based on their terms, and then the other opposition would say, we agree to clean up, but to clean up on our terms. That is why constitutional reform has been lagging. Constitutional reform and constitutional change have to be done in a consensual way. So what we have seen is a PPP when out of office agreeing to a national solution. And when in office, disagreeing and rejecting a national solution. Let us not forget, the Granger administration campaigned on power sharing in 2011 and 2015. And when Granger got into power in 2015, he decided to set the thing in motion, and he appointed Moses Nagamutu. And the PPP rejected Nagamutu. That was their way of rejecting the olive branch from Granger. That was their way of rejecting. Perhaps Granger was wrong to give them the excuse by saying Nagamutu. And when they said no to Nagamutu, he should have appointed somebody else. So he may have erred tactically there. But he did make the offer to them. That is a fact. And what they did, reject the offer again. And I am sure that if the PPP were to find itself on the outside of power, it will embrace, again, it will embrace power sharing. The fact of the matter, sisters and brothers, is, as Karina Shea said in that calypso, when one side wins, nobody wins. Nobody wins. Everybody wins when we all feel safe and secure in a national government. And one of the things I respect the PNC for is that once Hoyt said in 2002 that power sharing was an idea whose time has come, the PNC has remained open to power sharing. From 2011, it has gone into elections with other parties. And it has remained consistent in the bid for power sharing. One can go back to 2006, I say 2011, but one can go back to 2006 when the PNC went in with PNC One Guyana. So go back to 2006, 2011, 2015, 2020, 2025. The PNC has gone into the last 5 elections as part of a coalition. And I respect them. The PNC could easily say, because some PNC members have been saying the PNC, until up to now you hear it, the PNC shouldn't go in with no APNU and all of that. The PNC should go on its own and so on. But Corbyn, Granger, and now Norton, they all rejected that idea and they've gone in as part of a coalition. Now you can say that they try to dominate the coalition. Big parties do that. And I have my disagreements with them on that. But I would rather go into a coalition with the PNC than to have the PPP out there on their own. Doesn't mean that I agree with everything that the PNC does. I agree with the PNC on policy. I disagree with them on emphasis. But I think what is more important is the policy and the commitment to a national solution. And that is why the WP had no hesitation in 2025 in going into the elections with the PNC as part of the APNU, although we weren't members of the APNU, we had left the APNU. But we decided to go in with the APNU for the election because we felt it was a better option than going it alone. And we saw what happened to the small parties that went alone. Because we are all competing for the same constituency. And what we ended up doing in 2025 is to give the PNC base, give African Guyanese 5 choices. We give them the choice of Apnu, Mohammed, Amanza, Nigel, Simona. 5. And the Indian Guyanese had 1 choice. 1 choice. Amerindians also had Amerindians also had, like African people, they gave them a wide open. But African Guyanese split up their votes because we didn't give them the choice of one coalition as we had done in 2011, 2015, and 2020. 2011, it was a divided opposition, but 2015, we came together. We gave them 5 choices, and they say, all right, we are democratic. We're going to give a little bit to everybody. And what has happened in the end? As a group, we are weakened because the 5 parties are not working together. There are 3 of them in the National Assembly. And they're not working together. Through no fault of the voters. Voters don't vote for division. Voters make their choice, and then it's up to the leaders to make good on the voters' choice. In hindsight, by voting the way the voters voted on the opposition side, because the leaders are not able to come together for a number of reasons, the opposition is weakened, and African Guyanese hold on the community, on the society, on the country is weakened. And so the PPP can taunt us because we are a divided opposition. And some people, when people are blaming APNU people are blaming WIN. The reality is that that's where the logic has taken us. Our country is never going to realize its full potential until all of us, all the political forces, are guaranteed a place in government. I don't want to sound as though I'm promoting disharmony in families. I don't. But you all know sometimes you get a house where mother and father don't talk to one another, but they live in the same house for the sake of their children. I'm not promoting that as an ideal model for families, but I'm saying it's a reality. Mothers and fathers stay together in marriage and so on, and they say for the sake of the children. And our political parties are not even able to do that. It is better when you are together in harmony for the sake of the children. But as a last resort, sometimes people stay together in disharmony for the sake of the children. We are not able to do it in harmony or disharmony. And I think some of our people, the opinion shapers, including my friends, some of them are my friends, but I think they've gotten this thing wrong. They're trying to forget the reality of our politics and to impose a unity. I remember in 1985, long time ago, 41 years ago, WPA is contesting its first election. And we were very excited. We had never contested an election before. And we were very excited, we young people. And we put our all into the campaign. We knew it was the era of rigged elections, but that didn't bother us. We were excited that the WPA was contesting its first election. And some people came on the eve of the election and suggested that we go into the election as a coalition with the PPP, with Dr. Jagan as the presidential candidate. This was 1985. And there were some members of the party who were open to it. But I think many of us younger people were not open to it. I remember not being sanguine with it, not being open with it, largely because, we had worked in Buxton and the other villages on the East Coast to prepare our people for WPA entering this election. Brother UC was the presidential candidate. And we had mobilized on that. I remember when we couldn't find polling agents across the country because people were afraid to be WPA polling agents. So we got close to the election and we didn't have enough polling agents. And the party sent Brother UC, myself, and my brother George, who was at that time active, to come to Buxton. Oh my God. We end up getting more polling agents than we needed. It's as if the whole of Buxton wanted to be polling agents for us. The young women, the young men. And we were able to cover the polling stations on the coast. Some of our people went as far as West Coast as polling agents. And there was the excitement of their own. And now you're coming to tell us we must do this thing with Dr. Jagan's thing. And, I remember being so despondent. Because now you have to go and tell these people Dr. Jagan would be the presidential candidate. And felt we needed time to sell that idea. That's how I felt. I felt we needed time to sell the idea. So we have always grappled with this thing of national unity. We can't do this thing on our own. No one party. No one party. Many people have congratulated us. The APNU 12-person team for holding our own in the National Assembly. But we are a coalition. Those 12 people are made, those 12-man team, 12-person team, is made up of WPA, PNC, and people forget it, AFC dissidents. So in a sense, you have three parties there. We are the only group there that is showing the country how different forces can come together and work together. If somebody were to come in, they will think that we're all of the same party because we developed that camaraderie and we play our different roles. That we are a coalition. That's what APNU is always holding up to this country itself. Ideologically, ethnically, we are holding up ourselves as a country to the government. So to the country, holding up ourselves. The diversity of the country, we are holding up to the country. And saying, this is what you ought to look like. If I were to say that we agree on everything under the face of the sun, no, we don't. We agree on the basic and the fundamental things. And we have disagreements, but they're slight. They're slight. And I want you all to pay attention to that. The APNU is a coming together of three forces. The PNC, AFC dissidents, Jarrett and Sherrod, and WPA myself. 'self. And we function well. We bring our ideas together. The younger people in the group are able to bring new and fresh perspectives on how things should be done. I am the grandfather in the group, the senior statesperson, and sometimes I have to bring to bear my long experience in politics on the group. Some people bring their business perspective. People like Nima Flubes and myself bring the perspective of the village. It's very important in deliberations, Vince Wright Jordan. We grew up in villages, we are steep in villages. Shama Solomon brings the perspective of Linden, which is always a unique perspective. Linden is a different place. Joretta brings the experience of the Amerindian woman. Coretta, the trade unionist. Some of the people there are urban people, urban businessmen. And so, you come together. We have there Ganesh Maipal, who is perhaps the most accomplished parliamentarian. He knows Parliament very well. He knows the rules. He knows the standing orders. He's able to peruse that budget back and forth between sectors. He masters that skill. He's East Indian. Young Riaz Rup Narain. Psycho Andrews, the young businessman, along with Terence Campbell. And then we had Dr. Dexter Todd, the young and rising lawyer, who brings that gaze of the law. And so we are able to work well as a team. And it's one of the things that I have always believed in, and we have always believed in, and that is politics as teamwork. So when people ask us why we didn't vote for the budget, is there nothing in the budget that we think is worthy of voting for? And the answer has to be, yes, there are lots of things in the budget that we find laudable, lots of initiatives that we find laudable. Our problem with the budget is deeper than the initiatives. We have a problem with the fundamentals of the budget. What ideals drive the spending? All of us came up in homes with the greatest economists in the world, housewives, our mothers. They do budget. They have to do budget every week, fortnight, sometimes every day. How do you have $40 needs, and how do you meet those needs with $20? The greatest economists, women, housewives. But our mothers were very clear when they were making those budgets. They were very clear. At the end of the day, they wanted their children to do better than them. That was the fundamental thing that drove them, the worldview. They wanted their children to do better than them. So sometimes they had to make a choice between that geometry set. And eating chicken as opposed to ITAL food. They have to make those choices. We're not going to eat chicken today because Peter got to get his geometry set. Because their objective is that they didn't want their children to be in the same boat like them. They wanted us to do better. I see that thing up to today. And I'm amazed that that ethos is still with our people. They want their children to do better. That's the worldview. And we couldn't vote for a budget where we have a government that wasn't thinking that way. I want my children to do better than they're doing now. In this case, the children being the citizens of the country. What is the fundamental objective? Why are you spending money? You go people's house, sometimes 2-3 cheddar missing from a step. But when you go inside, they get food. They're making a choice between food and infrastructure. A step. And they're reasoning that their child could go on to be a mechanic, to be a nurse, to be a teacher, to be a lawyer, to be a doctor, to be whatever they want them to be, if they are fed properly. They're making a choice based on a view of where they see the world going. I was speaking to my mother on Sunday, who's doing a little bit better now. And she was telling me as she was paying attention to the budget and all of that she ended up crying. So I said, Mommy, well, what were you crying? You crying for the people budget? She said, no, the reason she was crying is that she couldn't come to grips with her son being a leading voice in the country. Although I've been doing this since I was a boy, my mother still can't deal with it. And I had to explain to her how she made it possible by some of the choices she made. She moved to Washington, D.C. in 1969, and she would pass by Howard because she lived a couple of blocks. And she would see these children, young people going into Howard, well-dressed and looking nice and talking properly according to her. And she vowed that one of her children would go to Howard. She don't know that you have to pay plenty money to go. So she started sending me Jet magazine and Ebony and all these Black American things long since I was a boy. They would send it and so on. And so she was preparing me for Howard, even though she didn't know where the money coming from. And I was explaining that to her, that, you know, see your part in it. Your part in it. I eventually went to Howard University, you know. I would have known nothing about Howard had it not been for my mother, who barely had a 5th standard education. And so I'm saying, our mothers, then and now, always knew where they wanted to take the society, where they wanted to take the family, and by extension, where they want to take the society. And that is what is lacking in our government and this budget. Is that you have money to spend, and you're just spending. And nothing is wrong with spending, but like I said, what's your objective? We have a story about an old bushman in boxing named Freddie Bandula. He named Freddie Bandula. You go to bush, and when you come back in the village, they say you light $5 for look for dollar. You light for throw light for look for dollar that you drop out the pocket. And somebody was saying one day that, Freddie Bandula had no good. And one of the older men explained, he said, what Freddie Bandula was doing was demonstrating to black people that they could own money, that they could own wealth, and they must not be afraid of wealth. That he made money to the point where he could light one and look for the next one. And I found that very insightful. Whether Freddie Bandula himself was thinking that, this is what was read into what he was doing. There were two views. One, that he's stupid, you waste money. But the other view is that he was showing that a black man could own money. And so, what your objective is very important. And so, although there are things in the budget that we found laudable, who would argue with a raise in the income tax threshold? That's a good idea. We support it. But we support to raise it to 200,000, not from 130 to 140. Who would disagree with a raise in old age pension? But we wanted it to raise from 40-something thousand to 100,000, not 41, 43 to 48. So it is not the initiatives. It is the thinking behind the initiatives. We don't have a problem with infrastructure development. Who would not like better roads and better bridges? What we object to is spending half of the budget, half of 1.6 trillion dollars on infrastructure. What we objected to is the way in which infrastructure is used to promote corruption. What we disagree with is the way in which the infrastructure money is used to promote inequality. So, it is not that we disagree with the budget for the sake of disagreeing with it. It is the worldview behind the budget. It is the method of distribution of the monies in the budget. I have to, as an advocate, think about how this budget is going to impact on the people I see every day. The women bodyguards, women guards, the teachers, the public servants, the small farmers, the housewives, the small businessmen. I have to think about those people because those are the people I see every day, the old people. And I am going to that budget with that gaze. African people, poor people of all races. And when I look at that budget, I'm saying, am I seeing these people in there? And I'm saying, no, I don't see them. They're there, but they're in the shadows. I see some other people in the front. I see the friends, the family, the favorites. I see the rich. I see the powerful. The powerless are there, but they are in the background. The sufferers are there, but they're in the background. And so, while there are initiatives in the budget that we welcome, it is the budget in its larger perspective and in its targeted perspective that we disagree with. I cannot look black people in the face and say, Amerindian people, there is so much money in there for Amerindian people. God bless the government. God bless the Amerindian members on the government side and the opposition side for ensuring that our First Peoples get resources. I look in there, I see money for sugar, although sugar is not bringing back much. And I say, God bless the government and God bless the advocates of the sugar workers. The same for the rice farmers. The same for the fishermen and women. The same for business people, the commercial sector. But then as an African, what am I bringing back to African people that has their name on it? In a multi-ethnic society, you have national programs that benefit all peoples, all races. And then you have particular programs that have the names of the ethnic groups on them. LCD money has to go to Amerindians, is their name on it. Not Indian people or black people. Amerindian people, the LCD money is there. Gaisuko money got Indian name on it. But where is the subsidy for public servants? Where's the name of the African and something in that budget? And as an African, I cannot be happy with that. I cannot vote for a budget that excludes people who look like me, that relegates them to crumbs. How can I do that in all conscience? I can't. And I cannot be hypocritical, meaning that I cannot be black and ignore what is negative, what is negatively being done to black people. I know people dance around the race thing because the elite political culture said you mustn't touch race, especially when it comes to things to do with black people. I reject that thesis. I do not come out of that tradition. And I've gotten so much advice not to do it. But that's not my politics. I cannot watch black people in their faces and say, I had the loudest microphone. I had the loudest microphone in front of me. And I could not advocate for you. I advocate for all other things. And I could not advocate for you. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. And so we couldn't vote for the budget, not because we disagree with the individual initiatives, but we disagree with thinking, we disagree with the method of distribution of the resources. We disagree with the narrow thinking that went into the budget. We are going to continue to press forward. We are taking our budget into the communities with what we call street parliament. In the old days, we used to call it people's parliament, but now we're calling it street parliament. Because we want to say the streets are important. Streets are important. Tomorrow night, Friday night, we're going to be at Stabroek Market Square. Those of you who are in the vicinity, please turn out. Because our parliamentarians and other members will get a chance to discuss the budget in more detail ways. There's going to be no 15 minutes moratorium on us. We'll get to talk about the budget. We'll get to critique the government budget. We will get to offer solutions to the initiatives that are proposed by the government. And we get a chance to come back to the community and to engage. We said at the time of the election campaign that win or lose, we would come back to the community. And we are coming back to the communities now, using the budget as the medium through which to restart the conversation that we started before election. And then we're going to move to other parts of the country. I think the next week we're going up to Linden. We're taking the big population centers first. And then we're going to come into the villages. We're going into the hinterland. To engage the issues raised in the budget. We're not giving up. We're not surrendering. We'll continue to fight the good fight.